Admiral Kethver stood in the center of his command bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the glowing display before him. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion stretched out like a crystal cathedral, its walls made from the same beautiful material that formed the ship's hull. Everything about the vessel spoke of power and perfection. The Zenith Empire had built it to be the finest warship in the galaxy, and after 3,000 years of victories, no one could argue with that claim. The display showed a small star system at the edge of civilized space, one yellow sun, several planets, and a single blue-green world that supported life. Kethver's mandibles clicked together in what humans might have recognized as amusement. Another primitive world, another easy conquest to add to the Empire's endless collection. "Report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been questioned. Tactical Officer Zethmar approached, his crystalline skin reflecting the bridge lights. "The species calls itself human, my lord. They have achieved basic space travel but remain confined to their home system. Our scouts report they have built one large vessel, roughly 3 kilometers in length. It appears to be constructed from crude metal alloys." Kethver's amusement grew. 3 kilometers was barely larger than a Zenith escort ship. The Eternal Dominion measured 15 kilometers from bow to stern, and it was just one of many such vessels in the Imperial fleet. These humans clearly had no understanding of real power. "Population?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion on the primary world, with smaller colonies on nearby planets and moons. They have not yet achieved faster than light communication, though our analysts believe they are close to breakthrough." "Too close," Kethver decided. "We will deal with them now, before they become a nuisance. Dispatch the standard compliance fleet." Zethmar bowed his head. "How many ships, my lord?" 3 battlecruisers should be sufficient. If they surrender, immediately we will integrate them into the Empire as workers. If they resist, he let the threat hang in the air. The Zenith had perfected the art of making examples of defiant species. Usually, the sight of their worlds burning was enough to convince other races to submit without question. Far across the galaxy, in the Sol System, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of humanity's greatest achievement, the USS. Defiance stretched around him like a metal city, its halls filled with the sound of thousands of crew members preparing for what they all knew was coming. Morrison had been chosen to command the ship not because he was the most experienced officer in the Earth Navy, but because he had something the other candidates lacked. He understood that sometimes the only way to survive was to fight dirty. The ship had been built in secret over the past 5 years, ever since Earth's deep space monitoring stations had detected the alien signals. The messages had been encrypted, but human computer scientists had eventually cracked enough of them to understand the basic truth. There was a vast empire out there, and they were not friendly neighbors. Morrison reached the bridge and settled into his command chair. The bridge was smaller than the one aboard the Eternal Dominion, but it buzzed with efficient activity. Every station was manned by the best officers Earth could provide, and every system had been designed with one goal in mind: survival against impossible odds. "Status report," Morrison said. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her sensor station. "All systems green, sir. The quantum drives are operating at full capacity, and the railgun batteries are loaded and ready. Long-range sensors show no contacts beyond the usual asteroid traffic." Morrison nodded. "What about the defense platforms?" "All orbital stations." "Report ready, sir. The Mars facility is at full production capacity, and the Jupiter mining operation is ahead of schedule. If they come, we'll be ready." Morrison hoped she was right. The Defiance represented humanity's best effort, but they were operating on incomplete information. The alien signals had revealed advanced technology, but the exact capabilities remained unknown. For all they knew, the enemy might arrive with weapons that could destroy planets from the safety of another star system. "Commander." Lisa Stone emerged from the engineering section, her face showing the strain of months of continuous work. "Captain, I've finished the final modifications to the quantum drives. We can now maintain faster-than-light speed for extended periods, and the tactical jump system is fully operational. Good work, Lisa. What about the weapons? The railguns are performing beyond specifications. We can accelerate projectiles to 90% of light speed, with accuracy maintained out to 50,000 kilometers. The kinetic impact should be devastating against any target. Morrison felt a small surge of confidence. Humanity had always been good at finding new ways to hurt each other, and those same skills had been focused on an external threat. The railguns were based on technology that had been developed for asteroid mining, but scaled up and refined for warfare. Instead of trying to match alien energy weapons, human engineers had gone back to basics. Throw something really hard at the enemy and let physics do the rest. Any word from Earth Command? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Ben Parker looked up from his communications station. President Hamilton sends her regards, sir. She also wanted me to tell you that the entire planet is counting on us. Morrison tried not to think about that pressure. 8 billion people, all depending on a single ship and its crew to stand between them and an alien empire that had conquered thousands of worlds. It should have been terrifying, but instead he felt a strange calm settling over him. This was what humanity did best. When faced with impossible odds, they found a way to win. The bridge fell silent as everyone focused on their work. The Defiance continued its patrol of the outer system, its sensors scanning for any sign of the visitors they knew would come. Morrison had studied every fragment of intelligence they had gathered about the enemy, and one thing was clear: they were arrogant. They believed their technology made them superior to every other species in the galaxy, that arrogance might be their weakness. Back aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kethver received confirmation that the compliance fleet had been dispatched. Captain Veltar commanded the force, and he was known for his efficiency in dealing with primitive species. The 3 battlecruisers would arrive at the human system within days, deliver the standard ultimatum, and either accept surrender or begin the cleansing process. Kethver had overseen hundreds of such operations during his long career. The pattern was always the same. The primitive species would see the Zenith ships and realize how outmatched they were. Most surrendered immediately. A few tried to resist, but their crude weapons were useless against Zenith shields and armor. The longest any species had lasted was 6 hours, and that was only because they had hidden their ships in an asteroid field. These humans would be no different. Their single large ship might put up a brief fight, but it would be over quickly. Then the survivors would be integrated into the Empire as workers, their world would be strip-mined for resources, and the galaxy would have one more example of Zenith power. The Admiral dismissed the matter from his mind and turned his attention to other concerns. There were trade disputes to resolve, rebellious planets to punish, and the eternal task of maintaining order across 1,000 star systems. The humans were just another small detail in the vast machinery of the Empire. He had no way of knowing that he had just made the biggest mistake in Zenith history. In the depths of the Defiance, Chief Engineer Lisa Stone made one final adjustment to the quantum drive systems. The modifications were based on theoretical physics that pushed the boundaries of human understanding, but they had tested them extensively. The ship could now move in ways that defied conventional space combat tactics, appearing and disappearing. Like a ghost, Captain Morrison felt the slight vibration that meant the drives were cycling through their startup sequence. Soon, they would know if all their preparation had been enough. The alien empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, but they had never fought humans before. That was about to change. The Zenith Compliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like 3 falling stars. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Blade, watching the primitive star system spread out before him on the tactical display. The third planet glowed blue and green in the distance, crawling with the radio signals of an active civilization. "Scan complete, my lord," reported his sensor officer. "We detect one large vessel orbiting the 4th planet. It appears to be moving to intercept us." Veltar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Just one ship? These humans are either very brave or very foolish." The vessel is approximately 3 kilometers in length, constructed from metal alloys. We also detect numerous smaller platforms around the planets, but they appear to be stationary defensive positions. Irrelevant, Veltar decided. Send the standard compliance message on all frequencies. Let these humans understand their situation. The message went out across the solar system, transmitted in perfect English thanks to the Zenith's advanced translation systems. Every radio, every communication device, every screen on Earth suddenly carried the same cold announcement. Primitive species of the third planet, this is Captain Veltar of the Zenith Empire. You are now subjects of our great empire. Surrender your military assets immediately and prepare for integration into our civilization. Your planet will be strip-mined for resources, and your population will be relocated to serve the Empire's needs. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your world. You have 1 standard hour to comply. The message ended, leaving behind a silence that seemed to stretch across the entire solar system. President Lisa Hamilton stood in the emergency command bunker, deep beneath Washington, D.C., surrounded by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the best military minds Earth could gather. The bunker's walls were lined with screens showing the alien ships, their crystalline hulls reflecting sunlight like deadly prisms. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built, their very presence a testament to technologies that seemed almost magical. "Ma'am," said General Robert Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, "we're receiving the same message on every frequency. They're demanding complete surrender." Hamilton stared at the alien ships on the main screen. She had known this day might come ever since the first alien signals had been detected 5 years ago. Every resource, every scientific breakthrough, every manufacturing facility had been focused on preparing for this moment. The USS Defiance represented humanity's best hope, but looking at those massive alien vessels, she wondered if it would be enough. "Options?" she asked. "We could surrender," suggested Secretary of Defense Paul Morgan. "Maybe negotiate terms, save as many lives as possible." "No," Hamilton said firmly. "We've seen what happens to species that surrender to these aliens. They become slaves, their worlds stripped bare. That's not going to happen to Earth." She activated the communication system that would connect her directly to the Defiance. "Captain Morrison, this is President Hamilton. You have full authorization to engage the enemy, show them what humanity is capable of." Captain Morrison received the message while standing on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien ships on his tactical display. The 3 vessels had arranged themselves in a triangle formation, blocking any escape route from the inner system. It was a classic intimidation tactic, designed to make their target feel trapped and helpless. "Amy, what's our status?" he asked. Lieutenant Carter looked up from her sensor station. "All systems are green, sir. The quantum drives are fully charged, and weapons are ready. I'm also detecting some kind of energy buildup on the lead alien ship." "They're charging weapons," confirmed Lieutenant Parker from Tactical. "Energy signatures are off the scale, sir. Whatever they're planning to hit us with, it's powerful," Morrison nodded. The aliens were following a predictable pattern. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, then demonstrate their power by destroying something important. It was effective psychology, but it also meant they were overconfident. "Open a channel to the alien ships," Morrison ordered. "Channel open." "Sir." Morrison's voice carried across the void, reaching the alien vessels and every listening post in the solar system. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy vessel USS Defiance. You are in violation of Earth sovereign space. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves." The response came quickly, filled with the sound of alien laughter that was like breaking glass. "You dare threaten us, primitive human? Your crude metal ship is no match for Zenith technology. We have conquered 1,000 worlds with ships like these. Your weapons cannot even scratch our shields." Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. run countless simulations, and prepared for every possible scenario. They knew the odds, but they also knew what they were fighting for. Then you've never fought humans before. Morrison replied, all stations, battle stations. This is not a drill. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as the crew prepared for combat. Weapon systems came online, shields were raised, and the quantum drives began their startup sequence. Throughout the ship, 3,000 crew members took their positions, ready to face an enemy that had never known defeat on the Crystal Blade. Captain Veltar watched the human ship with growing irritation. The vessel had actually moved closer, taking what appeared to be an attack position. Did these primitives really think they could fight the Zenith Empire? Tactical analysis, he ordered. The human ship appears to be armed with some kind of kinetic weapons, my lord. Projectile launchers of primitive design. They also have what looks like defensive barriers, but they're nothing like our shield technology, Veltar nodded. Destroy them, make it quick and clean, we have other systems to visit. The Crystal Blade's main weapon began to charge energy, crackling along its crystalline surface. The weapon was capable of punching through a planet's crust, and it had never failed to eliminate enemy vessels in a single shot. The humans would learn why the Zenith Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, but as the weapon charged, something unexpected happened. The human ship simply vanished. Where did it go? Veltar demanded. Unknown, my lord. It just disappeared? Our sensors show no trace of it. Veltar felt the first stirring of unease. Expand search pattern. It must be using some kind of cloaking device. The USS Defiance had not cloaked. Instead, it had used its quantum drives to jump instantaneously to a position directly behind the Zenith formation. The maneuver was something the aliens had never seen before, a tactical impossibility according to their understanding of space combat. Target acquired, reported Lieutenant Parker. All 3 ships are in our firing solution. Morrison studied the tactical display, watching the alien ships. As they searched for his vessel, the Zenith had arranged themselves in a perfect triangle, which made them vulnerable to crossfire. Their shields appeared to be designed to deflect energy weapons, but Morrison had studied the fragments of alien technology recovered from deep space probes. The shields worked by dispersing and redirecting energy, but they had never been tested against pure kinetic weapons. Fire, Morrison ordered. The Defiance's main railgun batteries opened fire simultaneously, launching projectiles at 90% of light speed. The kinetic rounds were simple chunks of tungsten, but they carried the energy of small nuclear weapons. The aliens had a few seconds to realize what was happening before physics took over. The lead Zenith ship shields flickered and failed as the kinetic rounds struck them. The energy dispersal systems, designed to handle directed energy weapons, simply couldn't cope with the massive kinetic impact. The tungsten projectiles punched through the crystalline hull like bullets through glass, detonating the ship's exotic matter containment systems. Captain Veltar had time for one final thought as his ship died around him. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They didn't use energy weapons or exotic technologies. They simply threw things really, really hard. The crystal blade exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. The other 2 Zenith ships, reeling from the shock of seeing their flagship destroyed, attempted to return fire, but the Defiance had already jumped again, appearing above them and raining down more kinetic death. Within 10 minutes, all 3 alien ships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The Zenith Compliance fleet, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, had been completely destroyed by a single human vessel. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle on their screens, hardly believing what they were seeing. The alien ships that had seemed so threatening just moments before were nothing but wreckage drifting in space. Humanity had won its first battle against the galaxy's greatest empire, but Captain Morrison knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would send more ships, bigger fleets, and they would be expecting a real fight. The element of surprise was gone, but humanity had proven something important. The gods could bleed. The news of the Compliance fleet's destruction reached Admiral Kethver aboard the Eternal Dominion 3 days after the battle. The quantum communication burst came through the ship's receivers like a scream in the darkness, carrying information that should have been impossible. "This cannot be accurate," Kethver said, staring at the tactical report. "3 battle cruisers destroyed by a single primitive vessel? Check the data again." Communications Officer Rathel worked frantically at his station, running the message through every verification system they had. "The data is confirmed, my lord. The fleet's emergency beacons transmitted complete tactical information before they were destroyed. The human ship used some kind of instantaneous movement system and kinetic weapons that penetrated our shields." Kethver felt something he had not experienced in over 2 centuries of conquest: fear, not for himself, but for the empire he had served his entire life. The Zenith had built their power on the foundation of technological superiority. Every species they encountered was decades or centuries behind them in development. But these humans had done something that should have been impossible. "Summon the War Council," he ordered, "and send a message to the High Command. We have a problem." On Earth, the celebration was unlike anything the planet had ever seen. Every major city erupted in spontaneous festivals as the news spread that humanity had won its first battle against the alien empire. In New York, London, Tokyo, and every other major population center, people poured into the streets to celebrate their species' survival, but in the secure facilities where Earth's military leaders worked, the mood was more serious. General Hayes stood in the Pentagon War Room studying the tactical data from the battle. The victory had been impressive, but it had also revealed how much they still didn't know about their enemies. The aliens' shields were designed to handle energy weapons, explained Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief scientist on the Alien Technology Research Team. Their dispersal systems couldn't cope with the kinetic impact of our railgun rounds. But now they know our capabilities. They'll adapt. "How long do we have?" asked President Hamilton via secure video link. "Based on the alien communication patterns we've intercepted, I'd estimate 2 weeks before they send a larger force. Maybe 3 if we're lucky," Hamilton nodded grimly. "Then we use the time we have. Captain Morrison, how is the Defiance holding?" "Up." Morrison appeared on another screen, broadcasting from the bridge of his ship. "We're fully operational, ma'am." The quantum drives performed perfectly, and the railgun systems exceeded all expectations. "We're ready for whatever they send next." "Good, but you won't be facing them alone?" "The Mars shipyards are working around the clock to complete the other vessels in the fleet. We should have 2 more ships ready within the week." Morrison felt a surge of relief. The Defiance was powerful, but it was still just 1 ship. The aliens had an entire empire to draw from, and they would not make the same mistakes twice. Admiral Kethver stood before the assembled War Council in the Great Hall of the Eternal Dominion. The room was filled with the Empire's finest military minds, generals, and admirals who had conquered hundreds of worlds. But as he looked at their faces, he saw something that had never been there before: doubt. "The humans have demonstrated capabilities we did not expect," he began. "They possess some form of instantaneous movement technology that allows them to appear anywhere on the battlefield without warning. Their kinetic weapons are primitive but effective against our shield systems." General Zechthel, veteran of the Andromedian campaign, leaned forward. "How is this possible?" "Our intelligence indicated they were centuries behind us in development." "Our intelligence was wrong," Kethver admitted. "These humans have developed along different technological paths than any species we have encountered. Instead of focusing on energy weapons and shield technology, they have perfected kinetic systems and space-time manipulation." "Then we adapt," said Admiral Nethver. "We modify our shields to handle kinetic impacts, and we develop countermeasures for their movement technology." "Agreed, but that will take time. In the meantime, we must respond to this threat with overwhelming force. I am authorizing the deployment of the Third Fleet." A murmur ran through the council. The Third Fleet was the Empire's hammer, 50 of their most advanced warships led by the battleship Cosmic Destroyer. It had never been defeated in battle, and it had reduced entire star systems to rubble. 50 ships against 1 human vessel seems excessive," observed General Zechthel. After what happened to the compliance fleet, I prefer to be excessive, Kethver replied. These humans will learn that there are consequences for defying the Empire. The Third Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in a formation that had intimidated countless species into immediate surrender. 50 crystalline ships arranged in a perfect sphere, each one a kilometer of deadly beauty capable of destroying planets. At the center of the formation, the cosmic destroyer pulsed with barely contained power. Admiral Nethver stood on the flagship's bridge, studying the tactical display. The human system looked different than the intelligence reports had indicated. Instead of a few defensive platforms, space around the planets was filled with artificial structures. Orbital fortresses, weapon platforms, and what appeared to be massive industrial facilities. They have been busy, he observed. Sir, reported the tactical officer, we're detecting the human warship. It's moving to intercept us from behind the fourth planet, Nethver smiled. Just one ship? They are either very confident or very foolish. Actually, sir, I'm detecting 2 additional contacts. Smaller than the first vessel, but similar design. The smile faded. 3 ships? Yes, sir. And, sir, I'm also detecting energy signatures from the orbital platforms. They appear to be armed. Nethver studied the tactical display with growing concern. The humans had not spent the past few weeks cowering in fear. They had been preparing for war. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, flanked by humanity's 2 newest warships. The USS Retribution and USS Vengeance were smaller than his vessel, but they were fast and deadly. More importantly, they were crewed by officers who had studied every second of the first battle and learned from it. Status report, Morrison ordered. All 3 ships report ready for combat, replied Lieutenant Carter. The orbital platforms are locked onto the alien formation, and the Mars defense grid is fully operational, Morrison nodded. The solar system had been transformed into a fortress during the past 2 weeks. Every major planet now had defensive platforms equipped with railgun batteries. The asteroid belt had been converted into a maze of hidden weapons and sensor arrays. And deep in the outer system, the new shipyards were working around the clock. To build more vessels? Open a channel to the alien fleet, Morrison ordered. Channel open, sir. Morrison's voice carried across the void to the alien ships. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. You are in violation of Earth's sovereign space. This is your only warning. Leave now, or we will destroy you. The response came quickly, filled with alien arrogance. I am Admiral Nethver of the Zenith Third Fleet. You destroyed our compliance force, but that was a minor setback. We have brought 50 ships to deal with your 3. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had trained for this moment, studied every piece of alien technology they could find, and prepared for every possible scenario. But 50 ships was more than they had ever faced before. Then you still haven't learned, Morrison replied. All ships execute Operation Thunderstorm. The 3 human ships vanished simultaneously, their quantum drives allowing them to jump to positions throughout the alien formation. The Defiance appeared directly above the enemy flagship. The Retribution materialized in the center of the formation, and the Vengeance took position behind the enemy's left flank. All 3 ships opened fire at the same moment, their railgun batteries sending tungsten rounds screaming through space at 90% of light speed. The kinetic projectiles struck the alien ships with devastating force, punching through shields that had been designed to handle energy weapons. But the aliens had learned from their previous defeat. Their shields held longer this time, and their return fire was immediate and coordinated. Energy beams lanced through space, forcing the human ships to jump again, and again to avoid destruction. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships used their quantum drives to appear and disappear like ghosts, striking at the alien formation from unexpected angles. The Zenith fleet tried to respond, but their tactics were designed for conventional space combat. They had never faced an enemy that could be anywhere at any time. Admiral Nethver watched in growing horror as his ships died around him. The humans fought with a precision and creativity that defied everything he understood about warfare. They used the orbital platforms as cover, luring his ships into crossfire zones where hidden weapons could strike without warning. All ships form defensive sphere, he ordered. We make our stand here. But the humans had anticipated this move. As the alien ships pulled together, the three human vessels coordinated their attacks with deadly efficiency. The destruction of the Third Fleet created panic throughout the Zenith Empire, like nothing they had experienced in 3,000 years of conquest. On worlds across the galaxy, Zenith governors received urgent messages from the High Command. Subject species that had been quiet for centuries began to whisper about rebellion. The empire that had seemed eternal was showing cracks. Admiral Kethver stood in the war room of the Eternal Dominion, staring at the tactical displays that showed the extent of their losses. 2 fleets destroyed, over 50 ships reduced to debris, and thousands of Zenith warriors dead, all because of one primitive species that refused to accept their place in the natural order. "The High Command is demanding answers," said General Zechthel, his voice carrying a tension that had never been there before. "How did 3 human ships destroy our entire Third Fleet?" "They have turned their entire star system into a weapon," Kethver replied, studying the battle recordings. "Every planet, every moon, every asteroid has been armed with kinetic weapons. They fight like nothing we have ever encountered." "Then we change our approach," suggested Admiral Velkoth. "We bypass their defenses, strike at their colonies, force them to come to us." Kethver considered this. "No, that would take too long, and it would give them time to spread their technology to other systems. We end this now, before they become a threat to the entire empire." "What do you propose?" "We mobilize everything. Every available ship, every weapon, every warrior. I will personally lead the assault." The room fell silent. The other officers understood what this meant. If Admiral Kethver, Supreme Commander of the Empire's military forces, was taking personal command, then this was no longer just about conquering another species. This was about the survival of the Empire itself on Earth. The celebrations after the Third Fleet's destruction had been even bigger than before. But in the secure facilities where humanity's leaders worked, the mood was tense. They had won 2 battles, but the war was far from over. President Hamilton stood in the underground command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the solar system's defenses. The orbital platforms had been reinforced, new ships were under construction, and the outer planets were being converted into massive weapons platforms. But everyone knew it might not be enough. "Intelligence reports suggest the aliens are massing a much larger fleet," said General Hayes. "We're talking about hundreds of ships, maybe more." "How many ships can we field?" Hamilton asked. "The Defiance, Retribution, and Vengeance are fully operational. We'll have 3 more vessels ready within the week. The Jupiter shipyards are working around the clock, but we need more time." Captain Morrison's image appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the bridge of the Defiance. "Ma'am, I've been studying the alien communication intercepts. They're planning something big. The ship movements suggest they're pulling forces from across their empire. How long do we have?" "Based on their previous response times, I'd estimate 2 weeks, maybe less," Hamilton nodded grimly. "Then we use every day we have. Double the production schedules, arm every platform we can build, and prepare for the biggest fight humanity has ever faced." The alien fleet that assembled at the edge of Zenith space was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. 500 ships of various classes, from massive dreadnoughts to fast attack cruisers, all under the command of Admiral Kethver himself. The Eternal Dominion sat at the center of the formation like a crystalline cathedral of war, its 15-kilometer hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "Final status report," Kethver ordered. "All ships report ready for combat," said Tactical Officer Zethmar. "The fleet includes our most advanced vessels and our finest warriors. Nothing can stand against us." Kethver studied the tactical displays showing their target system. Intelligence reports indicated the humans had been busy during the past month. Their defensive platforms had multiplied, and new ships had been detected moving through the system. But even if they had doubled their forces, it would not be enough. "Set course for the human system," he ordered. "Maximum speed. We end this quickly and decisively." The massive fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the combined might of an empire that had never known true defeat. In 2 days they would reach the human system and restore the natural order of the galaxy. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the construction crews work on the ship's new modifications. The past month had been spent upgrading every system, improving the quantum drives, and installing new weapons that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Commander Stone approached, her face showing the strain of weeks of continuous work. "The modifications are complete, sir. The new quantum drive configuration will allow us to make multiple jumps in rapid succession without cooldown periods. We can essentially teleport anywhere in the solar system instantly." "What about the weapons?" "The railgun systems have been upgraded with new targeting computers and loading mechanisms. We can now fire continuously instead of in single volleys. The kinetic rounds have also been improved with better materials and guidance systems." Morrison nodded. "How many ships do we have now?" 6 vessels fully operational, with 3 more coming online within the next few days. The orbital platforms have been tripled, and every major body in the system now has defensive installations. Morrison felt a surge of pride in what humanity had accomplished. When the first alien ships had arrived, Earth had possessed only one experimental warship. Now they had a real fleet, backed by defenses that turned the entire solar system into a fortress. Any word from deep space sensors? Long-range scouts report a massive fleet approaching. "At least 500 ships, possibly more. They'll be here within 48 hours. Morrison took a deep breath. This would be the real test. Everything they had built, everything they had prepared for, would be decided in the next few days. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a plague of metal stars. 500 crystalline ships arranged in a formation so vast it could be seen from Earth's surface as a new constellation. At the center, the Eternal Dominion pulsed with barely contained power, its weapon systems charging for the battle to come. Admiral Kethver stood on his bridge, studying the human system with satisfaction. The defensive platforms were impressive for such a primitive species, but they were still vastly outnumbered. His fleet could destroy every human installation and still have ships left over. "Tactical analysis," he ordered. The humans appeared to have 9 warships now, ranging in size from 2 to 4 kilometers. Multiple orbital platforms around each major planet, and what appears to be a network of hidden installations throughout the asteroid belt. Still insufficient, Kethver decided. Begin the assault. Target their largest ships first, then systematically destroy their planetary defenses. The massive alien fleet began to move inward, their formation spreading out to attack multiple targets simultaneously. It was a textbook assault designed to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers and firepower. But as they advanced, something unexpected happened. The human ships simply vanished. "Where did they go?" Kethver demanded. "Unknown, sir. All 9 vessels have disappeared from our sensors. No energy signatures, no debris, they're just gone." Kethver felt the first stirring of unease. "Expand sensor range. They must be hiding somewhere in the system." The answer came in the form of tungsten rounds traveling at 90% of light speed. The human ships had used their quantum drives to position themselves throughout the alien formation, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They struck from above, below, and from the sides, their improved weapon systems firing continuously. Admiral Nethfer's replacement aboard the destroyer, Void Render, watched in horror as ships around him began to explode. The humans were using the same tactics as before, but refined and perfected. Their ships moved with impossible speed and precision, appearing long enough to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again. "Return fire," he ordered. "All ships, concentrate on Sector 7. But by the time his weapons charged, the human ships were gone, reappearing in a completely different part of the formation. The aliens found themselves shooting at empty space. While kinetic rounds tore through their ranks, the battle that followed was a masterpiece of human tactical innovation. The 9 human ships worked together like parts of a single organism, their quantum drives allowing them to coordinate attacks across vast distances. They used the orbital platforms as force multipliers, luring alien ships into crossfire zones where hidden weapons could strike without warning. Admiral Kethver watched his fleet die around him with growing desperation. His ships were more advanced, his weapons more powerful, but the humans fought with a creativity and adaptability that defied every military doctrine he knew. They turned space itself into a weapon, using their mobility to be everywhere and nowhere at once. "All ships, fall back to minimum safe distance," he finally ordered. "We regroup and reassess." But Captain Morrison had no intention of letting them escape. The human fleet pursued the retreating aliens, their quantum drives allowing them to appear anywhere in the formation. One by one, the crystalline ships fell to humanity's fury. Admiral Kethver stood alone on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, staring at the tactical displays that showed the ruins of his once mighty fleet. 50 ships remained from the 500 he had brought to crush the human rebellion. Around him, his officers worked in stunned silence, trying to understand how their empire's greatest military force had been destroyed by a handful of primitive vessels. "Sir," said Communications Officer Rathil, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. The subject worlds are rising in rebellion. They know what happened here." Kethver closed his eyes. This was what he had feared most. The Zenith Empire was built on the foundation of absolute superiority. For 3,000 years, no species had ever successfully resisted them. But now, the humans had proven that the Zenith could be defeated, and that knowledge was spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. "Orders from the High Command?" he asked. "They want you to return immediately for debriefing. The Council is concerned about the Empire's stability." Kethver looked at the human system on his displays, watching their ships patrol confidently among the debris of his fleet. Part of him wanted to order a final attack, to die fighting rather than return in defeat. But he was too good a soldier to waste the lives of his remaining crew. "Set course for the capital," he ordered. "Maximum speed." As the remnants of the Zenith fleet jumped to hyperspace, they left behind a solar system transformed. The humans had not merely won a battle. They had shattered the myth of Zenith, invincibility, and announced themselves to the galaxy as a new power. President Hamilton stood in the observation deck of the new orbital command, stationed above Earth, watching the reconstruction efforts. The battle had been costly. 2 human ships had been destroyed, and several orbital platforms were damaged beyond repair. But they had won decisively, and the enemy was in full retreat. "Status report," she said to General Hayes, who had joined her on the observation deck. "The alien fleet has withdrawn beyond the edge of our sensor range. Long-range communications intercept suggests they're returning to their home territory. We're also detecting increased activity on the networks we've been monitoring. It looks like other species are taking advantage of the situation." Hamilton nodded. They had known this would happen. The Zenith Empire controlled hundreds of worlds, many of them populated by species that had been conquered and enslaved. With the Empire's military forces shattered, those worlds would see an opportunity for freedom. What about our own expansion? Plans? The Mars shipyards are working at full capacity. We should have 20 new vessels within the next 6 months. The Jupiter facility is also coming online, which will double our production capacity. Good, we need to be ready for whatever comes next. Captain Morrison appeared on the observation deck, having just returned from a patrol of the outer system. His uniform showed the strain of months of continuous combat, but his eyes held the confidence of a man who had faced the impossible and won. "Ma'am," he said, saluting the president, "the system is secure. No sign of enemy forces within 50 light years. How is the fleet holding up?" 7 ships operational, with 3 more ready for combat trials next week. The crews are tired, but morale is high. We've proven that humans can fight and win against anyone. Hamilton smiled. "That we have, Captain." but I have a feeling this is just the beginning. 6 months later, the USS Defiance led a small fleet of human ships into what had once been the heart of the Zenith Empire. The Vega system, former capital of the galaxy's greatest civilization, was now a battlefield where freed slave species fought the remnants of their former oppressors. Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays that showed dozens of different ship designs engaged in chaotic combat. The rebellion that had started with humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy, and the Zenith Empire was collapsing under the weight of 3,000 years of oppression. "Incoming transmission," reported Lieutenant Carter. "It's from one of the rebel fleets? Put it through." The alien who appeared on the screen was unlike anything Morrison had seen before. Its skin was a deep blue color, with multiple eyes arranged around its head. When it spoke, the translation systems rendered its words in accented English. "Human vessel, this is Commander Thekmal of the Aquarian Liberation Fleet. We have heard of your victories against the Zenith. Will you fight alongside us?" Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had come here to ensure that the Zenith could never threaten Earth again, but they had found something more. An opportunity to help other species win their freedom. "Commander Thekmal, this is Captain Morrison of the United Earth Navy. We're here to end the Zenith Empire once and for all. We'll fight alongside anyone who shares that goal." The combined rebel fleet that attacked the Zenith capital world was the largest force ever assembled by free species. Ships from dozens of different civilizations, united by their hatred of their former oppressors and their determination to be free. At the center of the formation, the human ships moved with deadly precision, their quantum drives and kinetic weapons leading the assault. Admiral Kethver commanded the final defense of the capital from his damaged flagship. The Eternal Dominion was the last of the great Zenith battleships, its crystalline hull scarred by months of fighting across a collapsing empire. Around him, the remnants of his once mighty fleet prepared for their final battle. "They're beginning their attack," reported his tactical officer. "Multiple fleets approaching from all vectors?" "I count over 300 ships," Kethver nodded grimly. "Then we make our stand here, for the Empire." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The rebel fleets attacked with the fury of species that had been enslaved for millennia, while the Zenith defenders fought with the desperation of a dying empire. Energy beams and kinetic weapons crisscrossed space in deadly patterns, and ships on both sides died in brilliant explosions, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The human ships, with their superior technology and tactics, carved through the Zenith defenses like knives through crystal. Their quantum drives allowed them to appear anywhere on the battlefield, striking at weak points and coordinating attacks with deadly efficiency. The Eternal Dominion fought to the end, its massive weapon systems firing until the last moment. But even the flagship of the galaxy's greatest empire could not stand against the combined fury of the free species. When the kinetic rounds from the USS Defiance finally punched through its hull, the ship's exotic matter core detonated with the force of a dying star. Admiral Kethver's last thought, as his ship died around him, was a moment of bitter understanding. The Zenith had ruled through fear and superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy that combined both advanced science and an unbreakable will to be free. The humans had not just defeated them in battle. They had shown the galaxy that gods could be killed. The fall of the capital world marked the end of the Zenith Empire. Across the galaxy, the last Zenith forces surrendered or were destroyed by rebel fleets led by human advisors. The species that had ruled for 3,000 years simply ceased to exist as a political entity, Captain. Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the celebration on the planet below. Representatives from dozens of freed species had gathered to sign the Galactic Freedom Charter, a document that banned slavery and guaranteed the right of self-determination for all intelligent species. "It's hard to believe it's over," said Commander Stone, joining him at the observation window. "It's not over," Morrison replied. "It's just the beginning. We've torn down an empire, but now we have to help build something better." "Think we can do it?" Morrison smiled, thinking of the long journey. that had brought them to this moment. From Earth's desperate defense against impossible odds to the liberation of an entire galaxy, humanity had proven that no challenge was too great when free people stood together. "We're humans," he said. "We'll find a way." Below them, the celebration continued as species that had been enemies for millennia worked together to build a new future. The age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun, and humanity had lit the way for all the galaxy to follow. The gods were dead, and in their place stood something far more powerful. The combined will of free beings who refused to bow to anyone, no matter how advanced their technology or how great their power. The galaxy would never be the same.